it's really a good position to really. I would keep that with you that way.
He was volunteer, but wasn't going in job. Did you?
I honestly, guys, I just don't feel I know enough about
Yeah.
the town and the board and everything else. This is my, second year, and I've only lived here for 4 years, so I'm hesitant because I just don't think I have the knowledge. So. Expertise. Pardon me?
You have the expertise. This whole group.
So, I mean, I would like to wait at least another year before I would consider the chairmanship.
You guys. If you judge what I'll do it. What's your feeling, John?
But I don't want to force you to do it. I'm in the same boat as you. Like, my daughter still has volleyball. Those are usually on Tuesday and work. Like, time is very limited.
So what are you looking, so you're saying you don't have enough time to do it, so you won't be here?
No, it's just that my wife is disabled. So it's always a health. And I can't take care of the entire house plus anything else. So it's just that I give it as much time as I can, and I will continue as much as time. And I'll do it, but I just say I may necessarily don't know. Make me. And
I'll help you. That would help.
well, as a vice chair,
Yeah. What about?
Thomas, the rest of you could.
Yeah.
Second motion?
All right. All right, so I guess consensus is that I will serve as chair, serve as the vice chair. Yeah. Okay, so first order of business is police budget.
I guess I'm first in the hot seat then. I guess the easiest way to I'll bang it like I did last year and go line by line. And in all honesty, I'm not sure how much time you want to spend on the wages because it's kind of pointless to spend any time up there because it's irrelevant.
Correct.
It's bound by contract, so it's not even debatable, quite frankly.
Yeah, I guess the only one would be the additional, like, non-guaranteed stuff, like the.
Yep.
So I didn't review yours today because I didn't know what we're going over. So like the.
I can bounce
Part-time
down
one.
to part-time
Right, yeah.
if you'd like me to. So the deputy chief, and I guess maybe I will start at the top real quick. So obviously my salary is set by contract. The deputy chief is going to be contingent on whom I hire at this point in time. I'm still in process. I highly doubt that the incoming deputy chief will be paid the same as retired deputy chief Brooks was paid, just due to tenure and experience and everything else. So there will be some fluctuation there, but not enough, I don't think, to make any statistical difference. Full-time is contractual at this point, so that's irrelevant. I have asked for an increase in the part-time line wage. Obviously, that's not going to impact benefits, but it will impact that line. I don't know how many of y'all listened to the Board of Selectmen meeting probably 3 months ago when I talked about accreditation. The long and the short of it is I'm not looking to go to CALIA, which is kind of the nationwide accreditation process for law enforcement. Durham is a CALIA agency. Dover is a CALIA agency. Your bigger cities, a lot of them are CALIA agencies. All of those agencies have, well, I'm just going to use Durham because I could speak intelligently about it. Durham's captain dedicates himself entirely to CALIA, essentially. Jack Dalton is in that position right now. It used to be Dave Holmstock prior to him being promoted up through. And they have a non-sworn. How's it going? A non-sworn employee essentially dedicated to it as well. So you have a ranking officer and a non-sworn employee, their lives are CALIA. I'm not looking to go CALIA because 1, I don't have the personnel to deal with that. 2, we don't have the need for that. And 3, the price for CALIA is exorbitant. However, due to the LEAC Commission, the state of New Hampshire has instituted its own essentially homegrown accreditation. This existed a little bit when I was a baby cop. Barrington did not go that route, but other agencies did. So we have formed an accreditation commission at the state level in New Hampshire through PSTC. I don't know how much you've heard about it, Bill, thus far, but I think you go to the conferences too, so you're up on it. So jump in if I'm out of line or anything. The cost for an agency of our size, just for the accreditation, is $650. And the power DMS side of things is going to be another $1,200 or something like that. The cost of accreditation isn't particularly onerous in the budget. And actually, I'm going to cover most of those costs in this year's budget, so it's going to be irrelevant. What I am going to need is somebody else to help with that process. And Deputy Chief Brooks, who retired this year in June, is a subject matter expert. He came to us from Durham, which is a CALIA certified agency. We redid a lot of our policies already so that they mirrored CALIA. I'm going to use my internal affairs policy as one example. Due to RSA 106 this year, every chief of police in the state of New Hampshire had to turn in their internal affairs policy to PSTC, Police Standards and Training, by October 1. We had to reinstitute our internal affairs policies. The internal affairs policy that PSTC sent to us compared to our policy, which was already in place in the town of Barrington, was garbage, because we had stolen Durham's policy and instituted that from a CALIA agency. I had to add some verbal verbiage for RSA, but our policy was already miles better than what PSTC said, hey, this you can use. So we've already done a lot of the legwork. And by using Danny in that capacity when he was here, I was able to do a lot of it easily. By bringing Danny back, and I'm just going to keep referring to him as Danny, I apologize. By bringing Danny back onto the books and using him a shift a week, maybe 2 shifts a week going forward. It's not going to be that, because he took a full-time job, full-time-ish job up at the federal court in Concord. So he's not relying on me for employment. He's going to help me get through this accreditation process in the time that he has available. There is going to be an impact from an insurance standpoint from accreditation. It's also something that, while the state of New Hampshire, I don't believe right now is going to mandate, because there's funds involved and it's an unfunded mandate. I think best practice going forward is going to be through this accreditation process, and I want to be in the front of it, not in the rear of it. And I'm going to need somebody's help to do that.
Does the insurance impact like save us on insurance?
That is undetermined at this time. I called Primex. Primex's answer was likely. They don't know yet. It's too new. We're still in the opening salvo of this whole process. But the gut feeling was that that was going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you don't know what it is, but if you could say, at some point, we're gonna save $10,000 in insurance, and it offsets
Right.
most of this, then.
Do I think it's gonna be that much? I don't know. I don't. Did I miss any of the high points,
No,
Bill? Because you're,
Just to add in for general information, I think the whole process of accreditation and standardization will only help the police department. It will give clear guidance to the officers, what they can do, what they can't do, what's expected of them. That down the road, in terms of a lawsuit that might come where the agency did not have those policies and procedures, that's where I think law enforcement gets hurt, because, well, you put guys out there and you didn't have a procedure for this, then the town can be liable for that. So having those policies and procedures in place, I think is very valuable. And I think it's worth the cost. And Chief, do you know what the cost for CALIA is?
it's in the thousands.
That's right. So
This
this
is
is,
CALIA, the flat fee is in the thousands. That doesn't include the personnel costs to run it. This, we're in for less than 2K. And again, I'm gonna be keeping personnel costs way down with the use of a part-time employee and me, obviously, unfortunately.
so I think it's a good move. And the state is trying to implement that for all police departments to bring law enforcement up to a standard level.
Now, should that be part of your conference and training line?
That fee is gonna be paid out this year.
Oh,
It'll be in my current 23 budget.
So, gotcha.
I don't know what the revolving fees are gonna be yet. All I know is the upfront cost. That will come out of either my dues and fees or my training. There's not gonna be any additional impact. Yes, sir.
When we were discussing this at the select board, was back that I think one of the things that we, in addition to the liability issue, we just think it'll make the police department better. And so we were kind of positive about this at the select board.
So of the increase, because you're under this year estimated,
And I'll probably be under next year, quite frankly.
I guess of the 73, like, what, I guess, what of this total is for Dan?
I told Connor to build in 20 hours a week, essentially. Do I believe that deputy? I'm gonna call him an accreditation expert when I bring him back. Do I believe that Daniel is going to work that many shifts? I don't. In all honesty, I don't.
Okay.
But I want it available. I've also got the scenario that Officer Young is in a spot where he's a 32-hour a week employee. So Scott actually builds earn time like a full-timer does. So while I budget for Scott for 30 hours a week, he doesn't actually use it all because he takes earn time too. This year was a little bit different. Officer Turner, who we brought over at the end of last year, he works about one shift a week, but sometimes he can't because of his full-time job. He also went out on a medical issue that he needed to get taken care of. So I haven't had Officer Turner working for a little bit now. He's going to be coming back light duty here shortly. So that's why I've got a little bit in that line at the end of the year as well.
Danny's actually budgeted on the second page of the budget binder. It's the last position listed for the wages and benefits. If you want to know exactly how much his position would cost.
So what's the exact differential going to Clea? So you're saying half-time
As far as cost or time,
cost, yeah. What,
less than half.
less?
Easily less than half of the upfront cost. Infinitesimal personnel costs, because again, if we were going to have to go Kalia, I would be taking the deputy chief that I'm hiring full-time. That deputy chief would be dedicated to Kalia. I would also be asking for additional administrative hours to supplement my AA currently, because I can't have her doing her job and Kalia. So I'd be putting on probably a part-time AA to help the other individual with Kalia on top of me. So Kalia does every 3 years. They actually do an on-site. Before that, they do basically just a ramp up to make sure that your on-site's complete. And as soon as their on-site is done, you roll back into getting ready for the next on-site. It's extremely oppressive time-wise, and in all honesty, I don't think it's worth it. I just don't. I look at Dover and I look at Durham, and I'm not gonna make an argument that they're wrong for doing it because they're a much larger agency. And I think there's a gain there for a 12 full-time department, 14 total. I just don't see it. I see the state being, they are mirroring what I've seen thus far from the accreditation process. They're mirroring Kalia's standards, but they're much less. Where Kalia has hundreds of standards, they were looking at, I think it's 40 something if my memory serves it's not a ton right off the bat. But it hits the big ones. It hits IA, it hits use of force, it hits the big players. This is a great place for us to be. And at the end of this process, which is probably going to take 18 months, they said figure 2 years, but I think I'm ahead enough that I can shave 6 months plus off that. If at the end of that, the board and y'all look at me and go, hey, this is great, let's go do Kalia, I'll do it. Y'all are willing to pay for it. And that's what it boils down to.
So what's the biggest gap you have between the standards? Not clear, but what you're trying to get to?
So the biggest gap, a lot of it's going to be physical gaps, to be honest with you. Right now, I can tell you that even though our evidence room is secure, it's not in compliance. We're broadcasting, so I'm not going to go too deep into that, but there are weaknesses in my evidence room. Do I think I'm missing any policies? I don't believe I'm missing any. I think some of them are going to need to be sharpened. Our IA policy was really good because that's very important. And I make sure that our IA policy is up to snuff so that if anybody wants to file a complaint against one of my officers, they have the means and ability to do so, and that the officer's treated fairly as a result. I think that's very important. Our use of force is up to date because that's a very, very high liability area. When we get into some of the other areas of policy that aren't as, I don't want to say important because they're all important, but not as risk factor involved, I may need some sharpening on those policies. I'm not going to know until I get into it, unfortunately.
Does this organization do a periodic audit?
Yes, my understanding is that they do an in-house at the end of this process. They're going to do a preparatory in-house prior to coming out for the actual certification, and then it's going to be a revolving after that. I don't know the time frame yet, though, is my understanding. I know this much at this point. I went to a conference last year and got the inbox, and it's kind of where it's stayed at this point. I haven't actually done.
So they'll provide you recommendations for improvement rather than just going and digging back out.
Correct. The gentleman in charge is an ex-chief French, right?
Like French.
It's Chief French who has made a long career of this type of stuff. So yeah, Mike's not just gonna throw us to the wolves. He's gonna come in first and this is where you need, this is your strengths, this is your weaknesses, this is what we really need to touch on. They're setting us up, the state's not setting us up for failure. They're setting it up so that agencies much smaller than me can succeed. I just, again, I want to be on the front end of this and not the rear.
When, obviously you said it's 18 months, let's just assume 2 years.
Let's
for-
go 2 years, yeah.
After that fact, would that be something potentially the deputy chief could take over as their duties, so we're
Yes.
in theory taking this money back out?
Yes. Whoever I hire right now for deputy chief is not as strong as Daniel is in that area. Both the candidates I have at this time are strong candidates, but they're not as strong in that area as they would need to be. But having Danny in house during that overlap period, working together with the DC, yes.
Because that's what I'm saying, like, you got a 2-year window
Correct.
to do this and train the
And-
deputy.
Nor do I
Moving
think
forward.
that Danny is gonna want to be here more than 2
Right, I'm just trying to, money's there,
Mm-hmm.
ask for now, be asked again next year. But moving forward, long-term, is there a way to, like, I guess?
shape it back.
Yes.
I would answer the answer to
Okay.
that question as yes.
And do you expect the hiring process to be completed this year?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be done before January.
So we'll know, we'll be able to finalize the
Yes, sir.
budget. Based on that.
Hopefully I'm done before Thanksgiving, but I'm not gonna make any promises. Yeah, if all goes well, I'm done at Thanksgiving. I would like the deputy chief in place before I take off for Ohio for hunting season again, quite frankly.
Okay.
We good at the part-time? Shift dip is irrelevant. Overtime, I'm leaving that level funded hesitantly. Police witness fees, I'm leaving that level funded again hesitantly. You'll note over the last couple of years, I was generally very, very under on that line. This year, I'm gonna probably spend it all, maybe even go a little bit over. This is going back to the whole COVID scenario. We're catching up at this point. Scott Young, and I'll just throw this out there, Scott Young has court next week for a case from 2021. So we're playing catch up. They're not all that way. I mean, we're getting better, but there are some still hanging. So Jean Reed has done a great job as far as plea negotiations and getting good pleas. She hasn't had to drag the officers into court, but we've got a lot of cases that we're catching up on that we are winding up in court. We've also had, and again, some of them made the papers, we've had some pretty significant felonies this year. Those burn a lot of time at the Superior Court level. If Detective Sergeant Barber spends 5 days on the stand, that pulls from that line for overtime pretty easy. But again, we're gonna keep that level and just stay there. Holiday pay is what it is. That's contractual. The earn time buyout, play with us every year. I'm not a big fan of leaving it at 18.5, but frankly, it seems to be working. I don't like leaving liability, but folks now aren't buying as much as they're taking, so I'm content leaving that level funded is all. Highway safety grant is slightly down this year, actually. That is budgeted at 1/4 of the grant we get in. That's down because I didn't apply for any equipment grants this year. It's just patrol money. I'll pause for questions or I'll just keep flying. All right. Benefits are what they are. The legal prosecution is up slightly. That is also contractual. That will be Jean Reed's salary for the year. That was a very minor boost and quite frankly, very kind of her to do that for us. Contracts, pretty significant up there. I don't have good numbers yet, unfortunately. I called Stratford County prior to preparing this. It was actually the day before the delegation meeting. I told them that I was going to anticipate a 10% increase because nobody had told me anything. They had their meeting. I spoke to the nice lady in the office the next day. She said, yeah, they didn't make a decision. Probably your 10% will cover it, probably. County obviously has some issues going on at their level right now, so I'm not sure how much of a priority this is. So again, some of this is subject to change.
What does that contract line cover?
Contract line covers the dispatch costs to the tune of about 16,000, if that 10% is correct. Central Square, which is IMC, which is our computer program, WB Mason, Hope Memorial Humane Society, GPS monitoring for my cruisers, the SWAT team, which is going up to $2,000 from 1,500. That was anticipated. We knew that was coming. Alarm fees, range fees, accreditation. That's a new one this year to the tune of $650. Power DMS for accreditation, $550. TLO is added in there. TLO, I've never included before, but it's a very impressive tool for a Detective Sergeant Barber. It's about $1,400, a little over $100 a month. It allows Amanda to do her job much more efficiently when working on cases. It also helps me in my background investigations for new employees.
What is that acronym?
I don't know. Amanda tells me TLO.
Where's
that's
the
what I
thing about
put in. Yeah, I'm not gonna try to guess. I can get that information for you from Sarge.
It's an open source database,
There we go.
that basically they buy up public information,
Western
put it in the
Union.
file and sell it. There's three of them. There's Accurate, Clear, TLO. And what they do is they just go out and if an entity has public records, they sell it, they buy them. You can find criminal histories in there. If the state makes their criminal histories public, you can find voter information, all sorts of information. It's great for finding people.
Yeah. Quite frankly, we have better luck using TLO to track people down than we do our police databases. The information is quite often better. Adobe, you all know what Adobe is, and When to Work is our new scheduling application that I was forced into last year by my employees because apparently that's what millennials do. It's $220 and it's well worth it because it makes my sergeants' lives a lot easier and they don't give me headaches. So the big part of the contract increase is going to be the Stratford County dispatch line. And I wish I had a firm number on that.
Who has ultimate control over that? Is that the county commission?
It is the commissioners, yes, sir.
Hmm.
Yep. They may have made a decision by now and I just didn't get a call, but I don't think so. I was pretty annoying and I think the lady would have called me. Vehicle equipment and maintenance, again, this is one that we kind of gamble with every year. And I say that just because 17.5 will not actually do what we need it to do. However, with the working of details and the input of the cruiser hourly billing that we add to it, we wind up being flush and being able to do what we do. However, if we have a year where we don't have any road work, et cetera, we may have issues. I don't foresee that anywhere in the near future. They don't seem to be stopping with road work or maintenance or power lines, but it's something to be aware of.
There's a good chunk in that detail line.
Sure is. Yep. I want to say, and please don't quote me on it, Katie would kill me if I tried to. This past quarter, we expect an influx of just over $4,000, if I remember right. Does that sound right to you, Peter? From just the cruiser hours back in.
See, I don't break it out
I
that way.
haven't done the quarterly for quarter three yet, so I don't know. I haven't got the spreadsheet, so.
Katie did the math for me and it's somewhere right around $4,000, I believe. And again, don't quote me on the number, but it's significant. That's why we're able to keep that line down where it is. Copier lease and supplies level funded at $3,000. Police communications up. We've been doing some business inappropriately in my world and I got sick of it and I added phones to the cruisers. If my people show up at a crime scene or an accident scene and do what they do, which is take a picture with this, they have opened themselves and their phone up to defense, discovery, and right to knows. That's unacceptable. It's not fair to my people. It's not fair to me, quite frankly, because I don't want to be the chief of police that gets a right to know on something that has to look at my employees and go, everybody's phones now. So frankly, I'm adding phones. I didn't buy one for every cruiser. We bought, memory serves 5 so that we would have enough to go around on the general patrol day. That has to happen. It's ridiculous that we're relying on our own people. If you think I'm making a call to a suspect on my personal cell phone, it's not going to happen. Now we have them in the cars and we can go to work again. So there is an increase in communications there. Other than that, it's just the general increases, nothing outstanding. The bulk of this is the MDTs that we went up last year. It's been invaluable. That program has been nothing but a success. Printing is 250. I don't think you really care about that. It's leveled. Conferences and training, I'm asking for another $1,000. We're gonna be in the red in conferences and training this year. Our training requirements are going up again. PSTC is finally getting to a point where they're offering more in-house, but a lot of classes are still pay to play. Field training officer hasn't been offered at the academy in a while that I'm aware of. We have to send officers to that. We have to pay for that. Crime scene schools, all of those things. They're now pay to play games, and unfortunately, it is what it is. 11K will get me there. I'll be asking for another increase next year, quite frankly.
As standards and training mandated, what, 24 hours now?
It's coming up next year, I think. They did it incrementally,
Right.
and I believe the 24 is next year. Yeah. And again, some of that is online work, our what we call our 3-2s is online. So 6 of that 24 is available online from the PD, but a lot of it's not. And that's bare minimum. Quite frankly, 24 hours of in-service training for each employee is ridiculous. Actually, what is it, the medical firm? How many in-service hours per, yeah, a lot. You
2
know,
weeks at
yeah.
least.
So I don't limit myself to that. I try to make sure that all my staff get additional training in areas that interest them. But for instance, if one of my guys or girls finally says, you know, I'm interested in crash reconstruction. We haven't had a reconstructionist since I gave it up. I don't, no, I'm sorry, Adam went to get it after I did it. That's 2-week school, and there are 3 of them over the course of time. Used to do that up to PSTC. I haven't seen it in a long, long time.
Florida?
Yeah, they were bringing it to Manchester.
Yeah.
Field training officer is a 4 to 1 week school. I send all my supervisors to FBI LEADA, which is a very condensed version of what would lead to the National Academy. I believe strongly in the FBI LEADA program. The instructors are incredible. It's a very, very good class. But every time I send somebody to FBI LEADA, it's just shy of $1,000. I've been taking advantage of New Hampshire Municipal and Primex for some leadership schools and some supervisory schools. Those are free. Some of them have been okay. Some of them have left something to be desired, but they're free. They're free except for my cost for staff. So in all honesty, 11,000, not a whole lot to work with. It's less than $1,000 a cop, quite frankly. But we're gonna roll with that this year and see how that goes. Dues and fees is level funded. That's everything from New Hampshire Chiefs to DARE to my K9 guy in the USPCA. It's the same as it has been. Mileage, we'll leave that alone. Postage, stupid dogs and everything, we'll leave that alone. Operating supplies, I'm not gonna touch. Again, do I think probably things are gonna continue to get more expensive? I do, but we're doing okay this year, so we're gonna leave it alone. Uniforms, again, I'm asking for a slight increase in the uniform line. If you look in the binder this year, I'm already in the red and I'm not done. Uniform costs have gone up. Pair of pants has increased, shirts have increased, vests have increased. We are looking at less money in return from the DOJ for our ballistic vest grants. So that's now coming out of our pockets as well. And vests expire every 5 years, whether we want them to or not. I have to buy my employees new vests every 5 years. They deteriorate, they no longer offer the coverage. Again, minor increase. Do I think that's going to cover me for next year? Probably not, but it is what it is. Vehicles increase to 50,000. I don't think it's going to do it. I thought it was going to do it. I've been looking at anticipated state bids because they're not done yet. Tahoes last year were 42,000. Let me go to my insert here because I just wrote it down today. If you'll bear with me. I spoke to McMulkin Chevrolet this afternoon. We've gone from about 42,000 to $52,600. So Tahoes are up 10 grand. The Fords are likely going up at least 5, and I don't know if I can get Chargers. Don't know that I want Chargers because Chargers are killing us on maintenance. Those V8 Chargers are eating us up in vehicle maintenance. The V6 Charger that I picked up last year hasn't been bad. It's only a year old. I don't know what it's going to look like long term, but the V8s are killing us. I will not buy another V8 Charger.
Whatever you put into that line, will that include equipping it to be road ready, or is that buried somewhere else?
Gambling on the fact that we have details and I'm gonna have enough money in the vehicle maintenance line to support the purchase of equipment that I need outside what I can transfer from one cruiser to the next.
All right.
I'm gambling. It's generally a safe gamble, but I'm gambling.
But if you change your make, then you won't be able to transfer that equipment.
A lot of it you can't even change within the make. They're not playing the Crown Vic game anymore, where we were able to transfer Crown Vic to Crown Vic for what, 15 years or something. They'll tweak the Dodge Chargers just enough so that a lot of the equipment isn't. Yep, the cages, you can keep the main body, but you have to buy a new hoop and everything to put the cage in. The transport seats in the back don't quite fit. So realistically, changing make doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Ford has done the same to us. I don't know if, so I'm going, we're punting a Charger this year. And I know you guys asked for vehicle information, so I've got that with me. We would have been, so this should have been a 2 cruiser year, folks. It's in the summary. This should have been a 2 cruiser year. I should have been asking you for $100,000+ for cruisers. We've been running a ghost cruiser, quote unquote, not for patrol. I will not use a ghost for patrol. It does not see patrol use, but we've had it for admin use, for the detectives use, for the deputy chief's use, for going up to trainings, things like that. We've historically, the last couple of years, used a cruiser package in that capacity. Lately, it's been a 2022 Ford Explorer. I just got that 22 Ford Explorer marked up and on the road this week. I picked it up from Mike today for striping. That is no longer used in that capacity. It is absolutely insane with the price of cruisers for us to use a $50,000 car as a admin vehicle. So thankfully, the board approved a mid-year purchase this year. We were able to get a brand new Equinox, whatever, for about 2/3 of the cost of a cruiser. I'm going to be able to get it outfitted for about $5,000 rather than closer to 10. So with that done mid-year, this year's budget taken from a couple of different money sources, primarily the rotating detail fund. I only need 1 car because we're going to keep that car in the admin capacity, not changing my fleet size. I'm not adding a road cruiser. I'm leaving that as an admin vehicle. So if somebody needs to go to police standards and training, they're not going to take one of my marked units. They're going to take this Chevy. It will have lights and sirens in it because what I don't want is to have my detective up in Concord at the lab and have a major issue blow up here in town and not have her be able to get back here in a timely manner. Do I want Amanda driving like a maniac in that car? No, I don't, but I want her to have the ability to move vehicles out of her way. So I'm putting a light package in it. It's just a very low profile, low speed light package. So yeah,
But that's not on patrol, then in theory, it should last a lot longer.
much longer.
It's not sitting running.
Correct.
Nothing for.
It won't be,
8 hours.
it won't be idling, it won't be doing details, it won't be running
It's a regular
code.
car.
Right, it will be essentially a normal car. This is not a cruiser, it is not pursuit rated, it's not rated to drive like a cruiser, so it will not be driven like a cruiser. It'll be a normal car for all intents and purposes, and yes, I expect that to last probably until after I retire.
So I understand right, and in terms of the cruisers themselves, the rotation for placement.
Yep.
Is still south.
Still intact, yep. And Unit 8, which is a V8 Dodge Charger, thank God, will be going out this year. Unit 8 currently sits at 114,000 miles. Unit 6, which was the last of our Ford Tauruses, will be going to auction next week. So Unit 6 went out for the admin car. Unit 8 will be going out next year for the incoming cruiser from this budget. And then it'll be Unit 5, which is the cruiser that I primarily drive. I'm sitting at about 101,000 right now. So yeah, no, the cruiser rotation, since we've implemented assigned cruisers and have the fleet back to where it needs to be, is going very well. If I can just get these V8 Chargers out of my fleet, I'll be in good shape. So that's cruisers. I know that's normally a big question area. If I hit everything, anything else I can answer? After years of getting beat on, I come prepared for that one. So equipment, again, we're going slightly up there, not a whole lot, it's another $1,000. Contingency and police grant match just exist. They're not really lines. The clerical line is a Perry salary that is also contractual. And again, I'm asking for a slight increase in my canine line too. Everything has gone up. That includes dog stuff. We've also added, we bought it this year under this budget. It's a watchdog system. In the old days, when I was a handler, I had what we call the hot and pop in my cruiser. It's a temperature monitoring gauge, and when the car gets too hot, alarms sound, windows go down, horns beep, lights go off. We're not living 10 years ago anymore, and we don't want things to get to that point. So the watchdog system actually wires into the current temperature system, but will send Donnie texts and messages saying, hey, car's going up, temperature's increasing, you need to do this. So much safer for the dog. Is it an extra cost? Yep, it is. Is our dog worth it? Yep, it is. The money we have invested in Donnie and that dog are worth spending a little bit more every year to make sure that it's safe and sound. They kill dogs every year down south. It makes me sick every time I see it. I don't want to be in the paper for that. And not that Donnie would, but I want to make sure that he has the tools available not to.
Get packages like that for kids.
Yeah, no kidding. So that's the budget portion, and I'll pause there before we move on. What have I missed? What can I answer? What can I help everybody with? I'm pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Shoot.
It's really a contingency kind of question, but we're watching all of the open borders and Manchester now having issues with the illegal aliens and so forth. I don't think our environment is conducive to bring them, but with the numbers that are coming, we're getting close.
They're traveling through town. They're going to, we have 125 and Route 4 and 202 running through. Folks are going to travel through. They're not causing problems in the town of Barrington that I'm aware of at this point in time. Right, yeah. So.
But we're now having more cluster housing, which would be attractive to them for what they do in terms of seeking money or food or whatever. And we have a lot of fields where they could, if they felt like it, stop to set up camp. And I just don't know what our contingency plans are around that kind of an issue.
So most of our open territory on main stretches is privately owned. Nobody's setting up on privately owned territory because it's trespassing. Again, I haven't seen it. I don't know that Barrington's going to have to worry about it anytime in the near future. Growth is growth. We're growing. And I sat here 2 years ago and told y'all I should be adding a person. And I sat here last year and I told y'all I should be adding a person, but I'm not going to because Rick Walker's putting one on. And I'm going to sit here this year and tell y'all I should be adding a person, but I'm not going to because Rick needs his AA as much as I need another cop. And I'm not going to fight with the fire department over resources. I don't like, the whole fire police fight thing. I'm not going to engage in it. I respect Rick, and Rick and I work really well together, and I know Rick needs and Rick knows my needs. So I'm not going to come in here in a year where I know Rick needs something and try to push something for me. Do we need extra manpower? We sure do. Not just for any of that, but for growth. You got this going up back here. That's a lot of people going in. We've got how many units going in off of Route 9? That's a lot of people going in. We've already got the townhouses across from the middle school. That's a lot of people going in. That is going to lead to excess calls for all of us in the fire department. We need more folks, but I also understand that the budget ask this year is pretty significant. This isn't the year for me to be asking. You all need to realize that ask is going to come at some point, and public safety, police department always kind of takes a hind seat. This is going to have to come eventually. That is going to be.
Rick's getting impatient out here. He says, George, enough time.
He should have gone first then. The dog should have waited.
Have a good night.
Any other questions before we go on to? Okay, go ahead.
So I don't know if you all were expecting warrant articles talk tonight or not, but
Yes.
I might as well get it out of the
Yes.
way. We're asking for a $50,000 donation. Yes, that seems like a lot until you look forward to the projects that we have coming up. Was the TA able to forward the replacement schedule and letter to you folks prior to tonight? Okay, so I digitally sent that to Connor, and I'm happy to email that to everybody if Connor doesn't get it out to you. Danny Brooks, 2 years ago, built the replacement schedule. They all did have a chance to look at back then. Frankly, I left Danny's original letter in the material that I sent back to Connor because Danny's original letter did a very, very good job of explaining why we did what we did with the replacement schedule and everything else. I've updated everything with the projects that we've completed and what we've done. And again, I can hit the high notes. Go into cruisers, but we've already talked about cruisers. The computer equipment that finally got instituted this spring. MDTs are in the cruisers. We rolled them out in February and it's working phenomenal. We replaced our desktops inside with docking stations. So the same MDTs that my folks are using in their cruisers come in and dock at their workstations. When we have a prisoner, instead of going into the patrol room, we go into the booking room and we dock in the booking. If we have a major crime scene, MDT can come into the crime scene with us so we can do our documentation, our logs and everything right from the computers. It's fantastic. I am admittedly the one who utilizes that the least. You're not going to train a 24-year guy to do everything this is capable of. Sorry, it's not going to happen. But I have used my MDT in those capacities. I take it in the cruiser with me when I'm doing an enforcement grant. I use it for street work there. I'm actually able payroll. I'm the man that has to do payroll. Well, I may not be around on a Monday. When I took vacation a month or so ago, I was able to take my MDT with me and didn't have to put that burden on HR. Carried it with me and took care of it. So the MDT program has been fantastic. That could have been an enormous cost to the town. Thankfully, Detective Sergeant Barber and Deputy Chief Brooks were able to obtain a grant from the DOJ that covered the vast majority of that project. That bill is going to come due again in 5 years or so. Computers are what they are. We've talked to Block 5, who's now the provider for the town as well. They're anticipating that that's going to cost us about another $150,000 in 4, 5, 6 years, somewhere in that term. So that's now the replacement schedule for 2026, 2027-ish. Tasers, purchased tasers 2-ish, maybe 3 years ago. Dan Air was still on the board at that point. Tasers now are running approximately $5,000 a unit. 14 employees, do the math. Body cameras, we have contracted for body cameras. We just replaced our body 3s. They don't look much different with body 4s. Because we're contracted with Axon, they send me 12 of these because that's how many body cameras we contracted for was 12. So they send us the newest technology. We need to be looking at 2025, which is when the bill for tasers is going to come due to combine everything together under one contract. The board is aware of this. We'll talk more as things get closer, but that's going to be a $50,000 plus project just for those. So if you look at what we have coming up for costs in the long term, the short long term, $50,000 now is not a huge ask. It's going to take care of us later on to make sure we're where we need to be when computers and all this come due. Now, again, will I apply for grants as they come up? Absolutely. In 4 years, if there's DOJ money available for MDTs again, I'm on it. I'm in the final stages of a grant right now for body cameras to add a couple to our inventory and another charging bank. As these come up, certainly I'm going to jump on them if it's available, but I'm not going to bank on the fact that it's there. The other big ticket item is going to be the security system, the surveillance cameras. The security system in the Barrington Police Department that right now is 20 plus years old. That is the system that was installed when we built that building in 1999. The brains are antiquated and quite frankly, past their prime. We're working with the same company that provides right now for the town hall. They also looked at rec. I do not have a quote at this time. That gentleman was in a month or so ago, Dan, does that sound right? Give or take, and did the walkthrough. We showed him everything. We showed him the system. We showed him our cameras, which he laughed at. So he's preparing a quote as we speak, but that's gonna be, again, that's gonna be a big ticket item. That was supposed to get rolled in with a renovation. The renovation got paused, so that kind of got paused too. I'm not willing to pause my security system indefinitely, even on a renovation. We need to get that dealt with. Or
Yeah, that'll, when we update this replacements list, it will be.
as soon as I have a firm number to put in the system itself is listed in the replacement schedule. I just don't have a value attached to it right now.
And our concern is in fact to try to stabilize the
Right.
request.
Yep.
We don't get caught by surprise.
And
That's
that's-
very important.
And I think that's why Amanda and I and Connor talked. And I think that $50,000 level, if we kind of just stay there, will be okay in 4 or 5 years, should these bills come all due at once.
But we want to verify.
Yep.
We're doing the same thing. Great, so. Any other questions?
Do you have immediate plans on the police detail fund?
Not past what I've already done with it, no, sir. Outside of that admin cruiser, which has already been deducted.
Yeah.
Yes, I think.
I haven't done the quarter three.
Okay, if it hasn't been deducted, it will be shortly. We paid, that PO has been processed, the cruiser is in our possession. I don't plan on doing anything else with it anytime soon.
Okay.
In 3 years, might I use that to supplement the 2-year again? Maybe in 3 years, but that's a long time.
And do you think rates look reasonable?
As far as the detail rate, I think so.
We don't have any more Jakes.
No, I work details. There's no secret about that. I don't work that many. I hate details. They're mind-numbing to me. I can't stand standing in traffic that long, which is why you see me doing 4-hour blocks instead of 8s. I don't have it in me anymore. I just can't stand it. I need to be busy. My young staff is working a lot of details, but the rates are the same. You don't lose anything on me. To your point, when we were doing this before, was the overtime rates were a factor. They're not anymore. I make $65, just like, and I'm just gonna pick on my youngest guy, Henry Resnick, $65. It's the same. It's across, I'm sorry, 60. It's across the board. So we're not losing anything on George Joy being senior guy out there. It's the same.
You also think the vehicle contribution is sufficient?
I think, yeah, again, if we look at what's going into the vehicle maintenance fund and where we're standing, I think so.
Because that really motivated my question.
Yeah.
Whether the vehicle maintenance is still, but
I think that $17 an hour, we shifted that up last year, and I think
Right.
that's appropriate given the costs. Again, the issues I'm seeing in the Chargers aren't idle related. We put a new cooling system in a car with less than 60,000. That's not details, that's not idle, that's garbage construction is what that was. It's the Dodge. It's the Dodge.
it's been that way for years.
Yes, yeah, I mean, we got rid of, thankfully, we took 4 out of its rotation last year because it developed a significant engine knock. Quote unquote terminal engine knock, according to Craig. But we were able to get that out of our fleet and to auction at the right time last year. Shouldn't have been that one going, but it did go, and we were able to limp 8 through, thankfully. But now 8's got some issues of its own, and I'm just hoping to get that through to spring and get that.
Nothing with a new police station this year.
So we're asking for engineering money for the new PD. We're not putting the PD on. I think kind of the driving force, again, nobody's more important in this town than anybody else. I think this year, the library has a good plan and a good sales pitch to make. If the library wasn't in the place that they're at, might I be driving a lot harder for the PD renovation? Yeah, I probably would. But I think the library has a good plan going right now, and I don't want to be the guy that is putting my foot in front of that. I want the library to have a fair shake outside of the police department. So we're just looking for engineering money this year to get a better feel of what the actual cost is going to be and everything else.
So 150,000.
And if the town's not going to support that money to do that survey, they're certainly not going to support the PD renovation as a whole. So
I guess part B of that would be if the library doesn't pass, that building become a new police station and give Rick the entire building as is. As a renovation.
This one down here,
I mean,
Interesting question.
obviously, evidence rooms, cells, that type of stuff would have to be done, but if
we don't do cells, so
Holding
take that
rooms.
out of the equation.
toilet rooms,
Um,
there'd be some stuff, but I mean, it's a medical office building. It's already full of offices. There's a giant waiting room where the urgent care used to be. I just didn't know if something didn't go with the library. Instead of adding up and around, you can basically let Rick slide into your space with some innovation and then you'd be centrally located right on 125.
So in full candor, and this has been discussed, and I've talked about Connor, I don't want to be on 125. I don't particularly like being on Route 9. If I could uproot the public safety building as a whole and move it, I would. But Route 9 is not terrible. If you picture here, or even let's use that building, if the library folks watch this, I don't want them to think I'm scamming on them. If we use that as an example, or this building here, to get excuse my French, oh shit, I need to leave now call, and to go screaming out of here, this is terrible. This is terrible. And back there's no better. It's just like coming out of the intersection hot. It's just like coming out of one of the schools hot. It's just a bad thing. Route 9's bad enough, but it's not to the level of Route 125. My preference would not be on Route 1. And if you ask me, would you like to be somewhere? Not here. If you ask me if I could uproot the entire public safety building, I'd do that too. And I'd either put it back on Ramsdale Lane, or I'd put it somewhere on probably Smoke Street. I would prefer it to not be on one of those major roads. I still want it central so that I can shoot out. I would just prefer not to have it be on one of those roads for the initial go. By the time, and I'll use our current location, by the time I get onto Route 9 and get down to 125, I've got a better idea of what's going on, and if I still need to be moving at this pace I'm moving at. B, frankly, that initial adrenaline drop is somewhat mitigated by the time I get to 125 and I'm thinking clearly. That initial jump, if it's an oh shit call, if it's, fill in the blank, a bad domestic, if it's God forbid, officer down, you're hauling out of the building for that initial call, you're not square yet. Nobody is. I don't care how experienced. I mean, I still get that feeling to this day, 20, 40 years later. I would like to think I'm a pretty calm individual as a rule. It still comes, that rush is nature.
No, that's fair. I was just out of the box thinking.
Yeah, and again,
You're gonna be looking for a significant amount of money for that if you could each have your own building, so it serves two purposes. Maybe
It's
save
a
some
great
money.
idea. In Massachusetts, they have, at least I've seen it there, they have the option where if the cop is coming by or a fire engine's coming by, there's a stoplight there that turns red.
Yeah.
What would be the cost that, could we do that thing?
I don't know what the cost. I know the ambulance has that technology, and you'd have to ask Rick. I believe that the ambulance has that technology, because I'm pretty sure the lights in Gonic are set up for that.
I think it's called OptiPlex.
Opticon or OptiPlex.
Sensor in the car, the fire departments have it, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And any intersection you go to, if you're coming at it, it will turn
Yeah.
green in your favor.
I wouldn't trust it.
Yeah.
I've seen them not work. And I've seen the results of them not working, and you expect that they're going to work. I'm going to stop at every intersection every time, because I learned my lessons the hard way. Thankfully, I never got crashed in 125 and 9, but a couple of our cops did. I don't run 125 and 9, and especially not anymore. They're running red lights as it stands normally, let alone me coming in hot through the intersection. And again, I'm not adverse to it. If the state ever put the technology on the 9 and 125 intersection, I would definitely put it in the cruisers, but I wouldn't count on it. It's not technology I bet my life on, and that's exactly what I'm doing in that scenario.
Any other questions for?
Feel like I escaped pretty much unscathed. So.
I have one question. For you.
Shoot.
Do you have any officers that are right-handed and left-sided helmet?
No, valid question, and I don't believe I do.
No?
It was.
Okay,
So
so.
point of fact, they're left-handed that were made to be right-handed, but yeah.
No, that's, so would you shoot with your right hand still? And
Oh,
now,
yeah.
so do you sight with your left or your right?
My left eye takes over.
And you're actually sliding left, so you cross over. All right,
It's something I gotta work on.
yeah, because
Yes. It's.
my wife shoots better than I do because she's right.
Women, I'll shoot better than men, because.
Yeah, and
It's, because you never know.
You're actually keeping it on.
Yeah.
If one hand's disabled.
Yeah, and I should have probably covered it under the replacement schedule, and I'll just take a minute since we went down that road. We actually got the project approved from the warrant, from the money to put dots on guns. We are actually halfway there. We got the first batch back, 50%, just shy of 50% of my people have dots and are qualified with dots at this point. The last batch should be coming back here imminently. So we have upgraded our handguns with dots to help with that. It's not just the dominance issue. I'll tell you right now, my 47-year-old, I've had crappy eyes forever. I wear contacts. My eyes are not good. They've gotten worse over the years and my depth perception has changed. I'm having a real hard time picking up that front sight. The dot helps people like me
But
tremendously.
the field of vision is important to have both eyes. That you
Open,
have.
yes. Yeah.
And if you're right, if you sight with the right, you kind of close.
I found that the glasses on my deputy chief's desk actually help me in the office now.
That hasn't stopped you from going and filling your tags yet.
Not yet. Today I can't shoot a running deer, so today I'm just gonna wrap it all up.
Thank you.
Anything else? I'm gonna get out of here then. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm good. I'm gonna go around the front so you don't have to move. Okay. I'll bother any name instead of
Watch out for my cord. I don't need a.
trip over your cord. I'll leave that for Rick. Thank you.
Can you pass the candy dish down? Thank you. Careful. We gotta do the limbo.
Ready to your roll on. I. Into this ball. You're, put together very nice cover letter. I appreciate that. Thank you. You want to give us a little presentation and going through the budget, or would you just entertain questions?
Yeah, whatever works for you guys. They can use your fees for.
So in the interest of time, I think we could ask questions.
Yeah.
Because most of it has been explained pretty well. I do have.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah.
Anybody else can chime in. In fine tuning the budget, one of the areas that I see that we look at is your overtime versus your full-time and part-time vacancies.
Yeah.
Because as I understand it, the budget assumes when it's put together that all full-time positions versus part-time are filled.
Yep.
through the whole year.
Yep.
And your overtime budget is there to compensate when you don't have full staff.
Correct.
So when I look at those two lines and their changes, it looks like we're over budgeting the overtime to come because the full-time powers are not there. So I'd like to kind of go through the logic, how you got your numbers here.
So. Yeah, yes and no. Part of the problem we're running into right now is that, these guys, they want overtime. And So it really comes down to the fact that, if we don't provide some opportunity for them to get overtime, they're gonna go somewhere else where they can get it. I'll use for an example, the business right now is really tough. We lost a full-time position in April to the city of Rochester. Barrington and Rochester are really not a long ways off to start and pay for firefighters. In some cases, we actually pay more than they do. But Rochester, Dover, Portsmouth, these places have more opportunities than the Barrington, the Leeds, and Nottinghams. And, you know, I'm to be perfectly clear, I'm not trying to keep up with Rochester, but Rochester and Dover, but in the last 3 or 4 years, we've lost 4 people to the city of Rochester. And one of the things that Rochester has on the table that is appealing to the people that I've lost is the fact that overtime becomes available for them, not counting callbacks, but the way that the thing rotates around to them, that they can end up with overtime about every 10 days. Time becomes available. They have the same issue as all of us. It was just on a bigger scale. They have, you know, we all operate man for man. So, you know, my people say to me, well, you know, if we don't have overtime opportunities, we'll go somewhere where there's overtime opportunities. And again, you know, 20 years ago, when Barrington hired their very first full-time firefighter, we had 16 applications for that one job, and we had the opportunity to pick through them 16 applications, and 5 or 6 of them were decent candidates, and we were able to hire someone. We lost an individual in April, and I filled that position 3 weeks ago. And the city of Rochester is in the process right now of, they did a hiring process in April, in which we lost one of the people. They had 12 applications, they interviewed 8. And between hiring for the positions that they had and losing people, you know, that they didn't hire to somebody else, their application pool was gone in the bottom. And now they started that process again. And in talking to the assistant chief the other day, they had 16 applicants. 4 of them they threw out immediately because they didn't qualify, so they had 12. So why I say this is it's where we are in the business today. I think it's going to be a few years before it gets better. But you know, you get a place like Rochester and Dover and Portsmouth, you used to get 40 or 50 applications in Barrington, or we got 15 or 16, and now Rochester is getting 12, and Barrington, I literally had 1 person fall into my lap. I still don't know how he fell into my lap, but he did. So it kind of forces us to, you know, if we stand there and say, well, you know what, it is what it is, and you know, overtime is not available, they're going to go somewhere else. And then when they do go somewhere else, we're going to be stuck paying the people left behind overtime, which is really what happened in the summer. Is I couldn't even replace part-time people. I have 2 people that are part-time employees that are dual certified right now, that work for me on a regular basis. Some of the shifts to try to have 2 people on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, either go unfilled, or I backfill them with just an EMT, because the majority of what we do is EMS calls, but that's not necessarily a good thing. During the day, like today, we operated with a young lady worked for us that was just an EMT. So had we had any kind of a fire-related service, there would have been 2 of us going. So
Oh, well, I totally agree with the.
That's
need to
kind
have
of-
Overtime available.
That's kind of where,
When I look at the budgeting though, when you add your full-time salary and the overtime together, your year and so on. The increase that you're asking, $50,000. Is more than what I think fits that. I don't know that you need all of that because you had a big underrun in salaries when those vacancies occurred. So my question is there an opportunity where we could still leave adequate overtime, but reduce that amount of the increase?
well, again, it depends on what the town is willing to do. If they, the model I'm putting together says that we should try to have 2 people on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if there aren't people to fill that, where the options we have are either to not fill that position and try to fill it with, either an on-call person or you're forced to use overtime. And while if we had, for example, so if I have a part-time firefighter EMT that we pay them $21 or $22 an hour, that same position at time and a half bumps that number up to whatever.
So we need to be able to cover that. I agree.
So that, when you look at right now, this year, we've done 17, as of last week, we've done about 1,750 hours of overtime. So, overtime, you're throwing a dart at. It's a product of where we're at right now.
And recognize, that, from a pure bottom line perspective, the benefit costs related to physical plant positions are not being spent either during the day. There's a vacancy.
Yep.
So that's kind of a cover. And, you have overtime in your running it this year, understood.
Yep.
Because of the took back.
Chief, you hire a new person, green, no fire experience, assuming you can get somebody. How long does it take to get him or her through the training to the point where they are able to do the job?
We can't hire a full-time position without them being fire 1 certified on the spot. And they have to have fire 2 within 1 year.
Okay, so I come from a police background, so we would hire new people, green, send them to the academy. That's not the model for the fire service.
No.
Okay, so they have to have that.
Yep.
That firefighter 1, is that what it's called?
So by New Hampshire rule, they have to have fire 1, fire 2. No fire department hires anyone without an EMT, at least an EMT, and then they have to have CPAT. So for the person to come through the door, they have to have their physical agility. They have to pass that. That has to be in their hands coming through the door. Fire 1 has to be in their hand coming through the door, and they got 1 year to have fire 2. If you hire, and then this happened to a community over on the other side, so they had an individual that didn't have CPAT, he was hired as a firefighter EMT. The state retirement board came down and said, yeah, no, you can't do this. So the chief said, fine, he's just gonna be an EMT. And the state retirement board said, that's fine, but he goes out of group 2 into group 1. And he better not be caught with any fire. He better only be on the hands. So it is different. We don't have that ability to hire somebody.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to get at is it's onerous then to try to get somebody on and trained. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is if we have the people, we want to try to keep them.
Correct.
Is that Okay.
Correct. And again, and I'm probably to blame for part of this problem is I work a lot of hours and it doesn't bother me to work a lot of hours. But in reality, I'm not doing the town any favors because when somebody like tomorrow night, one of the guys that was supposed to work an overnight shift, he signed up for the shift and then realized that he has a class, he's not going to be available. So I'm going to cover that shift for him. And it's obviously it doesn't cost the town any money because I'm a salaried position. And I also had a spot that I couldn't fill Saturday day. And so I'm going to cover that shift Saturday day. And again, I'm not complaining about that. It's my job. I've been in this town my whole life but I'm going to get ready to retire and there's a pretty good likelihood that the next fire chief coming in will look at the job the same way I do. So that's why I say that I haven't necessarily done the town any favors. And we take a lot of pride in the fact that when somebody calls for an ambulance or somebody calls for a fire truck, we do the best we can to make sure that consultant and that service is taken care of. Then, so as long as the selectman, somebody isn't banging on the selectman door, when I call for an ambulance, I had to wait, didn't get one at all. If I call for the fire department, it didn't show up. They don't see, they don't see the problem, but we're all operating, on a shoestring. And I say that when I say all of us, it's the town of Barrington, it's the city of Rochester. They don't have any extra people, but the people don't come back on callbacks. So you're doing the best you can, as shorthanded as you can, to make, to solve the problem. And it takes having been here for 40+ years, we could have a fire in Barrington, maybe invite 1 or 2 communities to come help us and have 40 people there because they were volunteer and stuff like this. And now, to get them same 40 people, there might be 10 communities that are going to come do that with us. And again, the same problem could be in the city of Rochester. They might not need 10 communities. They may bring 5 or 6 because. And it don't matter, Dover, you talk to the chiefs in them places. The people come in, they want to work their shift, they want to go home, some of them don't want to. Barrington's fortunate, I got 4 guys that want to take them instead of overtime they can get. I had somebody work for me full time that I stood in and said, hey, look, I do an overtime shift. I don't disagree. I don't like the overtime numbers, but with the hand we're dealt, and right in the fact that there's money, like they didn't use some of that money in they didn't use some of the money in the benefits line because we went 6 months without it. But in all, I never look at that money in my budget ever as mine to use because I have no idea when they use that. I don't know if that comes out of there in November. So I've always kind of looked at the employee benefit line as whatever money was there is like, it's not there for me. I don't.
Yeah, I understand that's the way you look at it, but the bottom line is that it ends up as surplus,
I get it.
which is something that we're trying to just be as cautious as we are.
And I think, to me, I think you'll see that there's a warrant article request to take 100% of the money, and I get money's fungible, whether it comes from here to over here, however you play the game. But I broached the subject to the town administrator about taking the let's see. The idea being is to take all of that money, the other 50%, which ends up being, you know, you can tell you it's probably another $75,000 or $80,000 that would go into that revolving fund. And the idea being is that if it passed, we would no longer, we would, out of that revolving fund, we would pay all overtime. And we would pay the paramedic intercepts. You'll see that there's a pretty significant increase in the paramedic intercept line, and that's because Frisbee is gonna change how they bill, and we were probably getting billed somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 or 30 times a year for them coming out and helping us. And we were probably 35 or 40 times a year not being billed. And now HJ said, well, wait a minute, time out, we go for everything. So there's a pretty significant increase there. McGregor realizes that it costs a lot more money to have a paramedic on staff. So they've come back and said, hey, we have to up the cost. It comes out and bills us about 20 times a year. So the thought is for that money to sit in the revolving fund. We would no longer budget overtime. We'd no longer budget for the paramedic intercept. So we come out of that ambulance income, if you will. It's not surplus money. It's not something the selectmen or anybody can put their hand on. It can only be used for those things. And with the approval of the voters, it would open that them two things up. So that would be based, that'd be about $70,000 based on, you know, if my overtime stayed, that'd be $90,000 if my overtime stayed at 50 and ambulance contracts went to 40. That money would be used.
Anybody else have questions on this?
If we were to go and say eliminate the overtime and instead increase base pay for each of those firemen by $10,000 per year, would that cost the town more because of benefits and Social Security costs?
Yes. So there's no Social Security because they're in the retirement system, so they pay FICA, but police and fire do not have Social Security taken out of their salary. But the retirement system is based on base salary. So in theory, if you were looking to drop the cost of benefits down, you'd leave the money in the overtime and not increase in base salary, because I fit into the system where overtime still works for people in my age group. But I think it was 2011 when they changed it. Anybody that came in after 2011, overtime is not considered, detail rates are not considered. And that was done primarily because the huge amounts of money that being paid out to police officers.
Not like California, where your last 3 years' salaries gets your pension up, so everybody
Right.
goes overtime's
Right.
crazy.
So in this particular case, it would work against you. You don't
So
want
it's
to.
our benefit to pay the overtime.
Or could you give it a research?
Right.
Gotcha.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't disagree that $50,000 is a lot of money. But the thing is, at the end of the day, if we're having to use these people to fill shifts, we gotta find the money somewhere. You know, my vehicle maintenance line is blown out of the water this year, primarily because of a couple of unanticipated expenses. We lost the transmission in the Dodge truck, 70,000 miles on it, driving down the road, the thing just downshifted put me through the windshield and, so I pulled over, shut the truck off, started back up. Geez, it runs fine. So I drove back to the station. I called my buddy down the transmission shop that I've known for 40 years. And he says, pull the dipstick out, check the oil. I checked the oil, it smelled really bad. And he goes, well, he says, it's more than likely transmission is bad, but he says, sometimes there's some relays in it. He says, maybe now I'll take a look at it. He said, I don't even know if I can get a transmission anyway. It was $10,900 for the transmission for that truck, which was not anticipated. And then, and that's probably about how far over budget I'll be in that line this year. I would have been right up against it. Again, some unanticipated expenses. We had put some money in the forestry truck, which we were hoping not to, but it is what it is. So.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Amy.
No problem.
On your revenue sheet, I'm looking at the ambulance numbers. Are those including what goes to the revolving fund, or is it gross or net? I guess.
I didn't bring my budget binder with me, so. Well, we make the transfer quarterly, so.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that before the transfer, including the transfer?
This ambulance income?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is, I mean, all these figures should be other than, you know, the current quarter that we're in, that I haven't made the transfer for yet. These should all, well, the transfer usually happens like within the first
Yeah,
month.
I'm sorry, I'm not being
subsequent.
clear. I
Okay.
can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm asking is it says received so far is like $32,000. Is that after we paid the first 2 quarters to the ambulance fund, or is that included?
Well, it's as of 7/31, so typically the quarterly doesn't happen until the subsequent month. So this number might not actually be the figure for that month, but it's in line with like the ambulance receivable entry that we do every quarter that I post to 7/31,
Yep.
which I do monthly, which is based on what the auditor suggested us to do to line up with outstanding, you know, uncollectible.
So that number wouldn't have any of the third quarter.
Probably not, because I haven't done it yet, and it wouldn't even hit, like the actual bank transfer that we do wouldn't even hit till the next month anyways.
Right.
So, money wise, no, it's probably still in there for the third quarter.
So I do a pretty rudimentary thing, and I just did it today because I use a pretty rudimentary system to see and kind of at least track a little bit of what comes in. And because
I have I go to your history
I know
and I
you
can
do.
send
I
you
know.
one on an Excel file.
I take the quick med, when they send me a bill, it tells me how much money they put in for the town, because that's how they bill us, is based on what they've taken in. And I paid a bill today, which Amy wouldn't have yet anyway. But my figures show that through the end of September, the town's taken in about $115,000 in revenue from the ambulance, which is about on track.
115 or
Yeah.
15?
Yeah, 115,
Yeah, that's.
which to me is about on track, so 50% of that is $58,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
We're paying a full time. Paying 42 hours a week for full time, 40 out of that, there's one. About 30, like we get it in 36 hours of part time. Numbers for the ambulance, just so you know, I talked to the salesman the other day, ambulance right now is about 36 months out. If we order them tomorrow, they want they're telling you that you have to put a 15% contingency on a bid because it is so long to get it. He was supposed to be sending me some quotes, but rough numbers over the phone. He he told me to be looking at about, $325,000 for days old. And so that's about where, that's about where, that's about a little bit more than I thought. I actually looking at a 4-wheel drive, because it went crazy, over $100,000 more, so, it's probably not. But, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I probably over the next 3 or 4 months, I'm just like, the idea of what it wants. It will be a little bit later to get here, as long as it's the 36-month phase on. I get, it'll be a little bit later in replacement than we wanted to. Buy a truck right now. I want to be saying that it's only 36. Buy a truck. Not the same thing. We buy a fire truck. See.
I think we'll want to look more carefully at that when we get into the schedule replacement. Let's stay with the operating budget for a little bit.
Yep.
No, mind. Any other questions on any of the line items in the operating budget?
Just the one on the ambulance contract billing is the only other one that I saw that had a huge increase.
So what's Frisbee's really the driving force behind that one. So what Frisbee Medicare only allows one entity to do the billing. So what used to happen was Frisbee would pay Barrington $328 if they came out, and then they would bill the Medicare bill. Well, the thing was, is if the patient had supplemental insurance, Frisbee got that money, not Barrington. All we got was $328. So I went to them and said, wait a minute, let's, how about you just tell me what you're gonna charge me to pick this patient up and I'll pay it. And if they don't have any supplemental insurance, oh well, but if they got supplemental insurance, then the town can recoup some of that. So they came back and said, I think it's $250 we were paying. When HCA took over, and it was okay for a while, and then we knew what was gonna happen. They started looking at numbers and turned around and said, okay, wait, time out. We're not gonna provide free ambulance service to all the area communities. So they came out and said, hey, we're gonna bill you for every intercept. If we come out, we jump on your ambulance, we're gonna bill you for that intercept, just like the city of Dover does, just like McGregor does now. City of Dover gets $400 to, if they climb on and do anything for our patient, Barrington can get billed $400. Whether that patient has insurance or they don't have insurance, it's $400. The city of Dover bills us, we pay it. McGregor is the same thing. They're at $305. They were supposed to be sitting down the end of this month doing their figures. They anticipated their figure was going to match Dover, which would be $400. Frisbee stopped billing the town of Barrington in June. We haven't gotten a bill from them since June. But I anticipate at any time they're going to come to us and say, every time we come out, here's the cost moving forward. I think the reason they stopped billing is that some of the other communities said, wait a minute, we didn't have any money in our budget to pay for this. So Frisbee's kind of standing on, all right, starting January 1st. This is what I think they go. January 1st, here's the cost. I told myself, look, I have money in my budget. I need the service. I need you to come out and provide this care for us. I don't think you should be doing it for free for the town of Barrington. So this is, but we were doing, let's just say they were billing us $250 for, say, 25 or 30 Medicare calls a year. Now it's gonna be every time they come out and jump on our ambulance, which, looking at my numbers over the last few years, is between 75 and 80 times a year they come out to help us. So that's where my number comes from, is on.
Okay. Understand where the number comes from. All right.
And so with the increasing population in the town, I don't know what the demographics are, but how do you anticipate that affecting this in the future?
Well, I think if you look at the demographics, they're telling you that the school population is declining and it's gonna continue to decline for the next 5 or 6 years. And I'm saying this from the school board talking, not, they're saying that people buying these houses aren't coming in with their kids. They've had their kids, they're older people buying these houses, so population's going up, but it's not having that kind of impact on the school. So who's it gonna have an impact on? It's gonna have an impact on the ambulance, because older people need the ambulances more than younger people. So while it won't have the impact on the school side, it's going to continue to impact the ambulance side. I don't think fire side will. I think the fire side will stay.
So the school budget will go down in the future.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
Hold your breath.
it's why the guy gonna throw my name and I'll think on it, but just to see. I don't think.
You're looking for work.
I knew that, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he's got experience too. Did you know that? Yeah.
I got run out of there real because.
And you're just gonna
Too
get one
cheap for
perk
my
out,
dog.
you're gonna make a change to their,
But, so that's where the number.
Any questions on the operating budget? All right, now we get to the real
Yeah.
fun stuff here.
Oh, the cemetery.
Okay. I'm looking through your plans. And the option that you presented of potentially refurbishing it, give it another 10 years of life. What impact that would have. How long before you get to do a complete wall session?
I think I'm not sure we'll have it done by I'm not sure we'll have it done before the budget gets put to bed in January. But I do believe it won't be too long after that. And right now, everything is pointing in the direction that it would make sense for us to refurb that truck. That truck is pre-emissions, so there's no catalytic converter on it. We don't have to put DEF in the thing, which that's a single frame chassis. So a lot of you either get a single frame or a dual frame, and the problem with the dual frame, especially up in this area, is that salt gets between the two frame rails, and you can't wash it enough to make sure the salt doesn't get in between these rails, and what it does is it spreads it. That's what's going on with our current engine too, which is our newest engine. It's starting to show signs of pushing that frame apart. Does it mean that truck needs to go away tomorrow? No, but that probably in 6 or 7 years, it will be time for that to go away. So it really makes it so that if we spend $100,000 or $150,000 on engine one and do the refurb, get that back, that would allow us to replace engine two in 6 or 7 years, which would put it in the time frame.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask is that, John, are you gonna be able to put your spreadsheet with the replacement schedules on it?
Yeah, it's all here, right? All the info.
Because I think that was a very useful tool, but now I see it's really gonna need two columns. One that says, let's assume we do the refurb, and the other one says, no, it turns out that our cost benefit really doesn't pay it over the long haul. If we factor in all the maintenance and other things that come along, what would it be if we have to come with a replacement schedule so that we can look at, okay, what are the probabilities of each, and then what is the difference in what we would need each year in the way of contribution to being able to stay up with it.
So that's the 2026 line is either 750 or 150.
What's that?
The 2026 line, right?
Yeah.
It's either 750 or 150.
Yeah, and I think, and I hope I'm getting a little bit high at the 750. I'm really hoping that, that truck could be replaced for of us high 600s. Barrington traditionally doesn't. We typically have always gone after a pretty basic truck, not a lot of bells and whistles on them. So, but I've always tried to be a little bit liberal with the numbers so that it's easier than coming back and going, hey, chief, you said you could buy that truck for 500,000, not 700,000. You know, but I'm guardedly optimistic that that number might be 10% high.
Right, but for the putting the schedule together, the refurb of the 150 replaces the 750.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
and then does that 150 refurb include, I guess, whatever you need to replace it while it's being fixed?
We would, there's a couple of options. The city of Rochester currently has a reserve apparatus and they have very graciously said, while that truck's out, we got a spare truck sitting there. We loan it to you. I also believe the town of Madbury would be in a position to, I'm not concerned about having to spend money to get a truck.
And that would then, in that option, it would have what, 8-year or 10-year extended life. So we'd have to add then, at that point, an $850,000 item
Right.
at that new date, which was what, 2034, something like that.
It's,
Okay, so go with that. Make sure.
Do you add it in 2026? No, if you do it in 2026, no, you can do it in 2024.
yeah,
You need 8 years out of it.
yeah.
So that means 2032, you're looking at $1.7 million. Because you're buying it, you're replacing one and you're replacing two. Right?
Right.
But it's a 10, do it here, it's a 10-year life, so in 2034, we have a new replacement, full
Right.
replacement.
And it would probably bump engine 2 up a couple. Engine 2 would probably go with 2028 maybe.
All right, because you're
Right,
talking,
and
yeah,
that's,
with the issue, yeah.
so yeah, in my quick calculations, we're running very low then.
Yeah, that's, that I want to see, because I want us not to be surprised then in those years, so let's make sure that this is an adequate request.
Maybe 50K left in the fund in 2028.
All right, so I'm sure once you get more numbers or have a better idea, and we'll come back and.
The committee that was working was pushing to get the forestry truck done. They came back with a bid spec on the forestry. We put it out, ran into the same problem the highway department did, in the fact that we had one company bid on it. They didn't bid anything near what we asked for. It was $277,000. It wasn't a forestry truck. It was more of a rescue truck. So I asked the selectmen, not last night, but 2 weeks ago or a week ago, to reject that bid. Which it did. So now we're kind of in the pattern of going back to the various dealers, trying to get 3 quotes and go back and see what the selectmen may be interested in doing. My concern is looking at, again, following with Ford being on strike and all the others being on strike. It's going to drive the price of the vehicle up. And so I'm struggling with the fact that if we have to use this truck, if we have to hold off 6 or 7 months or 8 months till they get done being on strike and hopefully drop the prices of these vehicles down some, I'm okay with that. Yes, it hurts to push that vehicle a little further because it just stacks stuff up. But again, I can't justify my little key brain. I can't justify spending $8,000 or $10,000 or even $5,000 or $6,000 more because of the supply and demand aspect of this. So the forestry is kind of in a holding pattern right now. So we can get a good handle on what's a reasonable, what the town should expect to pay for that vehicle. So I'll get the committee that's working on that. It's in the middle of October. let me see if I can, there's probably only 2 or 3 companies that will even consider bidding on the thing, so. Let me see if I can push them to have something done by early December, at least, so we have an idea, even if the selectmen don't necessarily, but we would have an idea of what the cost.
Now, if your situation is similar to Chief Joy's, when you place an order to replace engine one, when that time comes, or any one of the engines, do you have to give a certain percentage at the time of the order?
No. No, so what they'll do is, what it sounds like with the guy with the ambulance said is he'll come back and let's just pick a number and say that he says that ambulance is gonna be 300,000. So he's gonna want us to put a 15% contingency on top of that 300,000. And as we get closer to the thing, if they come back and go, hey, we can only be a 7%.
But you don't have to give that money. It's added on. It's the end of the correction.
I'm not a huge proponent of it. I guess not. It's like, to me, you're giving somebody a blank check going, hey, well, I know you told me I could buy that truck for this much money, but unfortunately, it's the nature of the business we're in. You know, used to be buying ambulance or a fire truck, and 8 or 10 months later you had it. So it was pretty easy for the company because they built in a certain amount of profit. So even in a few months, if the cost of something went up a little bit, they were able to absorb it through the profit. But when they sit there, I guess I don't really blame them. They're trying to gauge what stuff's going to cost 36 months.
But over 50 grand is a pretty good contingency.
But it doesn't.
Well, when you get to engine two, you're gonna be a solar panel. EV.
Ambulance money, what's even that?
Go to section 8.
I need fire truck.
Oh, I'm sorry. Treasury report 7.
Because technically some of that money is now available, right?
Yeah,
Can you go down?
350.
Yes.
So flip the page.
Yeah.
Now, if during the refurbishment project, do you have to replace any of the miscellaneous equipment that comes on the truck to try to update that? Because it's like, don't like.
No, so the equipment and stuff like that, anything that we would replace, we do want to, we'd be able to do out of the budget and the equipment, whether we had to do hoses or anything like that. And that stuff we plan on, you know, we're only supposed to get, you know, so many years out, we're supposed to take it out at a certain time. So I wouldn't anticipate, I think the cost you're gonna see is, you know, that truck that we want to refurbish, it probably has 20,000 miles, 22,000 miles on it. So, we're gonna get the oil, ice in both of them, and give the transmission. Again, the mechanic that looked at it says, you don't did the over the feather if there was a problem here. So, what we're looking at is upgrade. We'd be upgrading the lights, we'd upgrade the pump. And the pump probably has a continual more hours. That's probably where the cost is going to be, taking the body off, taking the pump out, cleaning and scale loss. It would be all.
The other warrant articles, what, Rachel, any questions on the warrant articles for this time?
Did you have any questions on the subject? It's pretty straightforward.
Oh, gee,
Um, there is an increase in there. The school has told us that they were done. Again, that we're in the process now of putting a bid out. I hope to have this stuff back by the middle of November. So one way or the other, we should have a solid number for that. The town's not in the position to take over the mowing over there. Even though they bought a mower and stuff, it would in effect require that the town would have to buy another mower and they'd have to hire another person to operate the thing. That just doesn't, they could take the money to the cemetery base to pay the contract and buy another mower, but then incur the cost of, even the cost of hiring even somebody for the summer to do it. So, should the town in a few years make the decision to, say rhetorically, not, but I mean, there's been some talk about whether they would have a ground and maintenance division attached to the highway garage. And if so, if at that point, if it made sense financially to have people assigned to, they're gonna mow grass and shovel snow, they're gonna do this and that, and kind of a separate division, and maybe it looks that way. Connor has a number of occasions.
Oh,
Connor has on
Thank you.
indicated that, that money was, the school probably should be mowing it for free, because, it's still all our money. But we, the trustees, have pushed to say that what makes the most sense is to have, we want to be able to pay somebody to mow the grass, because that's the biggest complaint we get if the grass isn't mowed. That's the complaint we get. People go to visit their loved ones. And if we sit there and go, well, the school's doing it for free or the town doing it for free, it doesn't give us any teeth to say, hey, you gotta get over and mow that because people are complaining about it. So that's really why to this point. I think that $21,000 is a pretty solid number, because the school actually went out and found a vendor. They gave a quote to mow it every other week. So that's kind of where it came from. Still,
Yeah, just kind of FYI, that the select board approved a person who's going to be part-time, going to do the mowing during the summer, city property. They're also going to be a specific preventive maintenance mechanic for the rest of the year. It's out of the highway department, so that person isn't kind of the whole.
I certainly don't want to speak for the highway department, but I'll just say this, the guy that did the mowing, they had one guy from the highway department that did the mowing this year, and it rained a lot, so the grass kept growing and stuff, but he was busy enough going from here to the rec fields, to the public safety building, to the transfer station and landfill cap, that it wouldn't probably not have bought enough time left in his 40-hour week to get out of the cemetery and take up the difference.
How do lot sales compare to other communities?
We just sent the thing out to do. What we're finding is families, that we're selling more cremation lots, and even more people be cremated and burials. But we have tried to set our prices in such a way that it's not necessarily cost effective for you to buy a full burial lot and put cremation. We only allow it 3 burials on a full burial lot, so it could be a full burial, 2 cremations, or it could be 3 cremations. Because we don't want to make it financially prudent for people to buy a full grave and only put 1 or 2 people in as a cremation. And so
But do you think we're priced reasonably compared to other communities around us?
we're a little low. We're in the process of making that change, and we also spoke to the attorney about we get calls on a pretty regular basis from people that never lived in town that want to be buried here. We asked if it was legal for us to charge somebody more money if they never lived in town or don't live in town, and we can't do that. So we think part of why people are calling is because we're people on where they live, so.
Oh, we're destination.
You know, that's it.
Final destination.
So we are looking at that too. I think we're doing okay trend wise with the amount of land that we have. We still haven't laid out the area behind the historical society. We just put them beds in over in the old section next to the church. I've had some preliminary conversations with the church about there's some land out behind the church that really would be good for us, but not necessarily anybody else. And I've had some conversations with them. They haven't said no, but with the idea of perhaps the town would buy that land and enter into a lease agreement with them for X number of years, lease it back to them for $1 for X number of years, just so the town has it if it don't get used for 50 or 100 years. We're not getting taxes out of it. So they haven't said no. But I think the trends are gonna head more in a direction that will be okay with West Hampshire.
Raise prices, so I better hurry up.
Hurry up and die, right? Well,
Either that or find a graveyard already on your property.
well,
Do that, actually. Yeah.
the graveyard that's on your property isn't yours. You have the property all the way around it, but that's not yours, and you have rights to it. But in the state of New Hampshire, you can be buried. In the absence of town zoning that says how you can't bury on your property, you have to follow state rules. I've made numerous attempts with the planning board to say, you guys really ought to come up with something, because we get more and more people doing it. So just figure out what you want to do.
Are people being buried on their property?
Easily.
In numbers?
You can take my sister and my sister and my grandmother are buried on my father's. You don't have to, as long as you know, they're in the spot, so they're not within
Not
the
the swamp.
the right of way, the side, you know, follow regular zone.
And cremains are even easier to take care of. You just tell them to the dirt there.
And we're starting to get requests for green burials, but we're not seeing sense for the town to hit.
Just don't stick me in a compost heap.
Doing that. Any other questions for that?
No.
Motion?
Looking to adjourn.
Wait.
Can you approve the minutes from last week?
Before you go away, I'm from the Conservation Commission and got a message that you guys wanted to talk about. Which the dam, was that not correct?
That's correct.
Right?
Didn't have enough time.
No, I don't know. But he's been very good to give us his time, so.
November.
Conservation. So again, that would be under my reports. They've got, they have to be.
What was your name? I'm sorry.
I'm Ken Grossman.
Oh, hi, Ken. Sorry, I'm Amy Doherty. I've never seen you in person.
And that decoration.
We have,
There's an option to go to 22.
It's just a basic question, right? How much should the Conservation Commission pay versus the taxpayers? And how did that get divvied up the way it did?
that's part of it, right?
Yes.
I just put 50.
Well, I'm glad that Dannon is here. In that respect, because, the town has the responsibility of being a safe crossing. And that's been in flux for a while, and, the town has been out of compliance with the rules on it. And, a couple of years ago, I met with you, Dan. We talked about, that the Conservation Commission thinks it's fair to make a contribution towards doing that. And in good faith, as engineering was done, the Conservation Commission took money from the Conservation Fund and paid for engineering. And we had talked about some kind of split, and I'm not sure we set an absolute number.
Did not.
We did not, but, obviously the Conservation Commission would like as much as possible to use the Conservation Fund to acquire conservation interests in land in order to preserve the natural resources of the town. That's a really important function. That's the most important that we do, but we don't want to totally deplete our funds in order to do that. Couple of years ago, and so, you know what the cost of land is, and the few $100,000 doesn't go that far. So very often we're just making a contribution towards the purchase of an easement or outright purchase of land. That's what we've been doing. We have some commitments even on funds that we have right now. And a couple of years ago, when it wasn't clear how this was developing, there was a piece of land that went for several $100 million, and we were unable at that point, because we were waiting to see how the Richardson Dam would work out, to match the contribution that the town of Stratford made towards that land, which was on the Stratford-Barrington border. So but again, in good faith, because we want to be good citizens, we were willing to make a contribution towards that. But I don't think we set a number. And to be honest, when we talked about this at our meeting the other night, we didn't think that we should be coming up with a number. Just we wanted to talk about, what an appropriate number would be. And maybe you can help me out with this.
Yeah, I don't think we've read, but I understood that there was a study that you had commissioned, ecological, either DES or someone was supposed to make an evaluation of whether it was worth putting the dam back or actually eliminating the dam.
We had talked about that. I spent a fair amount of time talking about that with by the way, when all this started, I was chair of the commission. I'm no longer chair, member of the commission. But since I know where the bodies are buried, Joe contended, given that Rick was still here, I said I would come and talk about this. So there was some talk which originated, I think, from a member of the planning board, who may have also been a member of the select board at the time, of, would it be best to just remove the dam altogether? And Conservation Commission, in hearing that, wasn't opposed to that. But it was clear that in order to do that, so if the land in question, the town owns it, but the Southeast Land Trust has an easement on it. And the easement has rules. And the rules dictate that if major changes are going to be made to it, the Southeast Land Trust has to approve it. So when I approached them and said, would you be open to the idea of just taking the dam altogether? They said there would need to be an ecological study. And it turns out, from what I'm told, that the cost of taking it down altogether would not be greatly different than replacing the dam, in a serious way that allows, for example, the forestry truck to pass over. The only difference was, and this again comes from my conversations with the town administrator, and I don't have a record, this is just my recollection of it, that the advantage in taking the dam down altogether might be that it might be possible to get grant money to fund some of that. Whereas just rebuilding the dam, there would be no grant money available. It would be in no grantor's interest to help the town with that. And that's why that was talked about. But as far as I know, and I've had email correspondence with the town administrator, he needed to have more information from DES before urging the Conservation Commission to find an environmental scientist to do the study. We have one who's willing to do that kind of work. But without the go-ahead from the town administrator, the Conservation Commission has done nothing on that except have that conversation with this person and say, would you do it if asked? For a price, of course. It's a complicated, expensive proposition in itself.
So what have you contributed? You made some sort of money for a study or more?
No, we paid money for engineering work.
Okay.
Nothing for a study.
You remember how much that was? Park.
10,000?
I'm sorry.
10,000?
No, I think it's more than that. I think we went.
I think it's closer to
Either
50.
it's about 50,000. Initially, it was 10, and then there was another 50, I think. Once again, I point out that the Conservation Commission is all volunteer. The staff support comes from the town planner, and not unfortunately, there's a lot going on in town, and she needs to put most of her energy into the planning board. And again, a couple of other people have jumped into the future of Barrington. The Conservation Commission, which is connected to a great deal of very valuable conservation land, town would be well served by additional staff support, professional staff support. But that's another conversation for another time.
Now, based on the use of that land by population, which would attract more interest by the people, having the dam there or having it go back to what it was?
In my opinion, in the short run, I think that it's a very popular area. It has a trail on it called the Winnie the Pooh Trail that attracts interest regionally. And the pond itself, as it exists now, Richardson Pond, is gorgeous. And if you took that dam out, it's going to be for years less gorgeous. And ecologically, in the long run, it's an open question. you know, it will return, as things in nature do, it will return over time to beauty, a different kind of beauty. Short run, I think people would be upset by,
But once the dam is gone, if it goes, then there's no more maintenance to it.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
That's
You
right.
know,
that's absolutely true.
if we replace the dam, it's kicking that question, however long a dam lasts down the road, somebody's gonna have to deal with it then. As opposed to if it's gone, yes, you know, it's gone, the pond drains and.
One,
You know, all of that.
yeah, one more factor though. People are gonna want to get over to the other side in some ways. It'd have to be some kind of structure. Oh, one other thing about it, the engineering plan for it is reduced the level of it. Currently, it's under state jurisdiction because of its height. If it's reduced a couple of feet, then it's all Barringtons. It's not under state rules anymore. And so even if we fix it, the state will be out of the picture once it's fixed.
Because the height will be lower.
Because the height will be lower. Yep.
It's like Northwood Meadows, if you've seen that, where I guess the beavers
You know,
got
you-
the
you
dam
could-
down and
Well,
it's,
if you want, you took the dam out, the Richardson Pond, the Richardson Marsh.
yeah.
And any other ponding that would be in there would be due to beaver activity. But the fire department still needs to go and have an access means across there, I think. And so they, you know, if you take the dam out, still need to go and provide for the bridge or something.
And I believe there actually is access to the other side. It goes to some personal, some private property. That's the big thing.
They can get in there anyway. Okay,
Right from the other side.
so it's not
I wish,
all or nothing.
yeah, well, I wish Rick were here because I had heard indirectly that he thinks that spot is the best way, most convenient way to get it.
Well, it's not the only.
He's said several times. The other thing I also need to know, Davis told us this has to be fixed. A few years ago, I don't know how many, 3 or 4 years ago, that they came down and said this.
Yeah, I think in terms of, we're pre-COVID anyhow.
There's obviously been some strategic planning going on with land use and everything. Is there any sort of, does this fall under any of that? Is there any, should there be more of a tighter association of somewhat with the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board and the Select Board, and how does that work?
It's gone around and around several times. I think the initial, I wasn't there initially. Kenny may have been there before I was. There was some question of whether the Conservation Commission had agreed to take care of this dam. And then the messages came down from the state and it never got to the town, state of the Conservation Commission.
That's not only before your time, it's before my time with the Conservation Commission.
But I guess.
But my recollection
think-
is that the Conservation Commission, when they wanted the town to take the property, said that they were gonna take care of it. I'm quite sure. I haven't looked it up, but that's my recollection.
But
We
that,
are where we are today,
we
right?
are where we
We
are,
just gotta look at it and then say,
It's been going round and round.
so how do we stop that?
but that's not, you know, as you know, this is not the same advisory budget committee. It's not the same select board. It wasn't the same Conservation Commission. It's, you know, it's another group of people who may have said things. I'm not doubting you, Peter. But it wasn't written into a formal agreement.
Well, it was sold to the populace with that condition, if I remember right. I could be wrong.
You know, and, yeah, well, my hopes are is that the populace will want us all to do the right thing. And that is to, you know, to care about the resource and to find a reasonable way to fund the project.
Would the $200,000 cover the investigation we need to better decide how to move forward?
Oh, you mean the ecological study?
Right.
Oh, 4 times over, I think, something like that.
So why do we need $200,000? We don't even know what we're doing.
The $200,000 is to fix it, I assume.
That's the.
That's an alternative would be to offer, do a study first. And
I mean, to me,
As
it's
an
logical.
option.
Let's
yeah,
learn more about what the options are and what the costs of those options are before we say we're gonna fix it.
Well, there was a preliminary estimate of what it would cost to remove the dam. And it's not much different than the proposal to replace it.
Yeah, it's just like he said, those future maintenance and repairs.
Or just,
The gift that keeps on giving.
yeah,
Well, if
ecological.
we had a Mother's Day flooding, that it would take care of the removal problem.
If you just, can't you just let it fail? Isn't that the same as taking it down?
The state would not approve.
No, they-
We're in violation of, with the state right now.
It happened for a few years.
And we've been kicking that down the road. And again, I think it would be unpopular to take it down, cost just as much, and you still get an advantage by
Do we know it?
rebuilding it at the lower level, so the state's over back.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but can we get this study done? I mean, to me, that's where we need to start. I mean, we're all kind of trying to figure out what we need to do. Have somebody tell
Again,
us.
in terms of the study, we can't, I think it's important to work with the town administrator who's working with the Department of Environmental Services. And without knowing that this will work for them, there's no point in going forward with the study.
We would have to go and make a recommendation.
And again, I wish he were here and then we could talk about where that is, but I've asked him a couple of times to, is it the time? This was not yet because of that absence of communication.
now, how long would it take
600.
for, I don't know, for us to make that start? Is he talking 6 months, just talking?
I can't speak to that. I wish I had asked that question. I can ask that question. But it's October now. I don't know what steps would take. I think we're talking about weeks, not years.
So an option would be to finish study out of this year's budget.
Are there other options that we think will be available? I mean, I almost wonder, just putting it on the warrant article and saying to the town, this is a choice.
What do you
Maybe one way to do it.
Without getting some expertise as to the pluses and minuses, is
I
that?
can't advise the voters in that,
It's
If we know we're gonna have to spend this kind of money, give me a blank check to do it one way or the other,
yeah, no, but part of it involves a judgment on the part of the town as to what you want,
What do you want?
what
That's
you
the
want that
fundamental question.
in that spot. And,
what you're saying, Salt has to sign off on it too?
oh, absolutely, because they hold the easement. And the easement is on a piece of property with a pond on it.
They can make some go down then. I mean, I guess my question is, the 600 grand you guys have is in theory taxpayer money, right? Conservation Committee has 600 grand.
That's money that comes from a portion of the
Land use change.
land use change tax.
Which is taxpayer money. And you're asking for another 200 grand of taxpayer money to fix a dam. Is there any use of the 600 grand going contributed to potentially help fix this dam?
Yes, I mean, that's.
Do we, which
that's
portion
what-
of it? Do we
what?
know? We don't know what.
So
That's the Conservation Commission is willing to have a conversation about what a fair contribution would be. Absolutely. And like I said, we put, I think, $50,000 or $60,000 into engineering. If there were a study, because part of the mission of the Conservation Commission is education, since we would gain knowledge from the study, if we went ahead with it, we'd pay for that. No question, but what we don't want to take responsibility for is for the entire cost of replacing or removing the dam. That's all. We don't want the whole thing. We're willing to share. And what that number should be, I would think we want to go back to a conversation with the select board and say, you know, what do you think would work? And this body obviously is involved in that process also.
Here to see who he's worked with. And now, who officially would talk to Salt? Conservation Commission, Connor, or board? Who works with Salt?
The town has a grantor.
The town, it's the town and self. Have the conversation. Who would represent the town? I suppose it's the select board. Once again, the Conservation Commission is entirely advisory. We are powerless. The only respect in which we have power is that conservation fund is ours. And even there, we can't spend it without the permission of the select board, but it can't be taken from us without our permission also.
And just a point, just as a reminder, 75% of the current use units go to conservation quarterly. So, just wanted to
Yeah,
give everybody-
That's the way it's.
So, yeah. That's currently how the percentage is right now, so.
yeah.
We're not going to be discussing that in this meeting. We wait,
But does that mean this all falls on the select board then to step in and make some judgment?
At some point. But we kick Cam down.
yeah.
We'll do it again. But
My hearing aids aren't working.
So at this point, should we go and make a decision as to whether to recommend to the select board to have the study done? Just keep that down.
That would be my guess, because otherwise we're all kind of,
Yes.
running around in the dark. And,
Yeah.
we need to give some direction, so that could be a recommendation.
It would be, and I would support that, and in terms of, in order to determine better how to present the warrant article and how much to request in what terms, I think that would be very useful.
There's just too many unknowns. Couldn't go on, couldn't possibly, yeah, exactly. I couldn't support that.
no.
Right, this is the big given the magnitude of the warrant articles here. I can see this one really taking it, but
But to take it down is, if it's the same price, basically, then down, there's no cost down the road. But however, if we replace it, what is the value to the community to have that resource to be able to go there and enjoy it?
Right.
That's what we have to.
That's why.
It depends on voters. I don't see anybody going in there clicking people as they go through counting them and that. But like Connor says, sometimes he sees people skating on the ice there when it's thick. And
May never be thick enough again.
Yeah.
can't do anything about that. I guess, I make a formal motion to recommend a study for the select board.
Nice.
So we discussed that. It was my understanding that actually the Conservation Commission was going ahead with that, but that's.
We're not opposed to it. We're just waiting for the go-ahead from
So you've got a recommendation there?
I didn't make a recommendation. I said we're not opposed to it. That's different than making.
The
a
question is, can it be
recommendation.
done in time for a warrant article decision?
That-
It's a three-week study.
That's a real
We don't know.
What's required?
I just googled Richardson Pond and it said in one of the minutes 50,000.
There was one expense to Bruton and Berube in 2020, 53,000. Okay, yeah, I don't see anything like for specific $50,000 other than that one. In conservation in the last couple of years, but we had a conversion with our software, so I can't go back all that.
I'll look back in e-treasury, somebody else will find out.
Okay.
So why don't we try, who can figure out how long it would take to do the study and what the cost of that study would be? Who determines that? That seems like the first step, yes?
I'm identifying the person to do it and then getting a bid.
Yeah, you have to find a consultant.
I've got a consultant. But I think between now and warrant article, I have my doubts that this person can just jump on it and get that done in time for a warrant article.
But even if it's next
I
year.
think you're kicking it,
We've got to somehow get this.
if that's the
process going.
direction, you're kicking it down another year.
Right, but still, even if it's just one more year, it's not gonna be 5, 10 more years. Let's put it in motion. So
And again, the town administrator should be in that conversation.
Right, and I think one of the things I would see if we get that moving, is that what we present as part of the justification for the warrant article includes a study, and based on that study, it may be more for this or that.
I don't know how much it's gonna cost.
Right.
So the warrant article, which would cost for the study.
Not for us.
Most everything.
I can't give a yes to a $200,000 line. I don't even know what we're doing.
That's, we have that.
But can the conservation committee agree to pay for this and not even worry about this year? We'll click down, we'll say next year, the next warrant article will deal with.
That'd be my suggestion.
I know.
Let me ask this question. Prior to the warrant article being published, would the board and the Conservation Commission decide on what percentage of that will be paid for by the Conservation Commission, what percentage would be paid for by the town?
The more details you determine ahead of time, the more likely you're gonna get what you asked for.
So, because, I don't see any support for us going forward with it as it sits today. So there's an alternative which says if the board and can come to an agreement as to what town's portion of this would be, the way other warrant articles are presented, that might be more, even if we don't have the study complete, more acceptable to the town.
I think that really depends on the total cost.
So what are you suggesting you would go on at this point, would go on the warrant?
Well, it could be the $200,000, but the way they do those, of which the town is responsible for 20%, for example, for the ridge grants and so on.
And the $200,000 for what purpose? For anything, no matter what?
Given
Whether
that
it's a
the
tear down.
costs will be relatively the same. So it would be for whichever option the study says we should do and the board agrees with.
Okay.
And then that would have more potential to be approved, given all these other things.
So what you're suggesting is that the select board and the conservation commission
Decide what the percentage is,
have
how much are you willing
have
to
a
pay them?
conversation as Dan and Connor and I had, I think, before COVID, right?
You just talk to Joyce.
But do we know that the estimate is valid still today? It sounds like it was done a couple of years ago.
The engineering,
Well, the total cost,
Yeah, the engineering study came up with a number, but.
I
I
don't have it, I don't have that in my head.
No,
And
I'll have it comes to my mind. But I don't.
yeah, and the fire chief that went up, the fire chief really wants to be able to get equipment, which I think he's probably right. That made it a lot more expensive.
Well, and one of the things that we do here is we set up something that says that the actual deconstruction or reconstruction of the dam will not take place in 24, 25, and so knowing that the total cost is gonna be 200, we want to put 100. So that there is an option for us to stage it over years,
Mhm.
if in fact we can say, yeah, state will hold off. We can't, they're not gonna force us to do it next year. Well,
You know, I can throw one other piece of information in there. I don't know if you all remember that they want to go put in a whole big old housing development on the upstream side, just off, just down the hill from Young Road. That all drains into that area now, so your water quality is gonna go, if that's approved.
I noticed under the dam, we
I,
had the OBE here.
are you talking about something on Young Road?
Yeah, they want to put in like 20 or 30
23,
additional.
23, they're talking about it 50 feet from us right now.
Yeah, and if that goes through, your water quality in that Richardson Pond is gonna go. So, that's the same problem that we were looking at with the Salt property going into Swains Pond a couple of years ago. If they didn't go and get control of that, it would have been prime housing territory. And you're looking at a similar situation here.
So this is to be continued.
yes, do we have any other questions? We can, thanks.
Thanks for staying late.
No, I appreciate you.
Yes.
What was the
And
actual?
you wanted to know about the minutes.
Do you guys want to approve those today or do you?
The,
I wasn't there, so I'm not gonna.
What was the actual outcome of that
There-
then?
only thing I'm not
We
in
actually come to.
conversation.
You're still not getting the Andrew.
Can we approve them next time?
We have no meeting next week, right?
No, something, sorry.
Meeting to meet for the whole meeting.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
The next time.
Yeah. I'm the big head.
Let's see, when is the next time we meet? In 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. All day.
Maybe late.
Oh, all right.
I don't think.
Yeah, issues
Like the same.
No, we're going to
And we're
turn
still
right
talking about
willing library. We all have water.
Yeah.
That conversation.
Yeah.
That
You
was
think this was
well
wrong?
done.
No, I love it. That area.
Only two frogs ever.
Couple of meetings. Actually, just a couple of weeks ago. they just
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Staying.
Yeah.
Humongous ass water snakes were-
Whoa. They like to call.
Or that's the school board meeting, so someone go to the school board meeting.
I've got a